Hey everyone, Tony D with another hot take. This one is going to be on something I call the negative bias. Um, Smash like and subscribe. And please, this is going to be a political video. If you like politics, check out Wokistan, a novel. It's a political satire. It's wonderful. All right, so what's a negative bias? Well, Tim Pool talks about the optimism bias. And I don't think he invented it, but he talks about it. And the basic deal is you kind of assume everything is okay when he talks about like women going on these trips abroad by themselves, and they have this optimism bias that everything's going to be just as nice in these third and second world countries as America, and then they get into trouble. I think there is the reverse of that, the negative bias. And a lot of us have that for whatever reason. It's something I had to get over, and that is always assuming the worst. And I think we got into a discussion in the comment section. Here's Little John. Hello. We got into a discussion in the comment section about my video about the Second American Civil War, right? And I don't want to call out the poster. This is not a knock against you. Thank you for the discussion, though. But I found you a little pessimistic about the left. And the left side of politics looks pretty grim right now. I mean, it looks like a total crap show. And there's a reason for that. The reason is they have been caught up in their own bubble. And this happens from time to time. It happened on the right. They got caught up in their own bubble. And, one of the things that the right did during the elections, this was back in the 90s, is they used the gay marriage issue as a wedge issue. And that worked for them when the culture said, I don't know about this gay marriage. And people were generally more conservative and moderate, and they felt a little threatened by gay marriage. And that worked. But then it stopped working because people accepted the idea of gay marriage and gay people, and then that strategy blew up in the GOP's face, and they were facing, the cycle hit them square in the face. Then Donald Trump comes along and he waves the rainbow flag at the RNC convention and basically tells everybody in the RNC, no, you have to accept gays. And they do, because most people are sheep. I mean, we all know this, right? Most people go along to get along. So when the boss, in this case it was Trump, says, okay, now we're going to be cool with gays, everybody just said, all right. I don't want to argue with the boss. So they got on board, and that became a non-issue for the GOP now. It's a non-issue. The gay thing is not an issue for the GOP anymore. They've accepted the log cabin Republicans, and because they opened that up, everything started to open up for them. And Trump tried to reach out to black communities and Latino communities and said, hey, why don't you try us? The Democrats really aren't working for you. And this is part of the cycle, right? I mean, for a long time, it was the Republicans that were stuck in their backward ways in some respects. Not all respects, because they came back in the 80s. But, traditionally, they had stuck to their guns, not out of really any sense of tradition, but this is politics. There's this, calculation that's constantly going on. Right, Joan? Calculation. Yeah, she's trying to calculate. And the calculation is, what's good for me? What's good for the election? If you look at the Democratic lineup, what's good for them, they think, is the extreme left. And the extreme left doesn't have the numbers. Okay? Every poll shows that most Americans are not on board with socialism at all. you know, for a long time I thought Bernie Sanders would probably win the election against Trump in 2016. Looking back on it, I have to wonder now. Maybe not. Maybe it would have been a lot closer, and maybe Trump still would have won. Even though Bernie's a nice guy, and that's a big factor in voting, you know, a lot of people can't get past socialism for good reason if they know what the hell it is. I think a lot of these people who are marching and protesting, if you look at the same thing going on in Australia and the UK. I watch a lot of videos of Avi Yemeni and Sargon of Akkad, and you watch same sort of things are happening in these other countries to different degrees. And they go out to these protests, and you can see the leftists, and a lot of them are just these, they're desperate people. They want to be liked. They want everybody to have a good time. They want everybody to be equal. They feel that if they could just change the world, you know, they're ambitious, that it would all somehow come together. What they don't truly understand what socialism and communism is. They don't. They think, oh, well, you know, the only reason it didn't work those other million times is because, you know, the wrong people got in. No, this time we'll get the right people in. No, you'll never get the right people in. You always get, you know, these power-hungry people, because power-hungry people go where the power is. It doesn't matter where you put it. They always go for it. And if you centralize everything, they'll go right for the center every single time. Joseph Stalin wasn't going to be a farmer. He just wasn't going to be a farmer. He saw where the power was, and he went for it. He absolutely made a straight beeline towards the power. If you had placed the power in Siberia, he would have went there. If you had placed it in another country, he would have left Russia in a hot minute. That's what amoral people do. Power-hungry, amoral people go after the power. So you have a lot of well-meaning people on the left, you know, they just don't get it. You know, when you have powerful countries like the United States, everybody's going to head to Washington. All the power-hungry people are in Washington right now. They're right there. They know that's where the power is. They know that, you know, if they work it and climb the ladder slowly, they'll get more and more power. They get into that system and they climb the ladder. There's no reason to kick away the system. All those people, the moment you kick away the system and have a revolution, those people will step back. You know, the ones that survive will go, okay, where's the power now? All right. Oh, the power's being cut. You know, the people who rose up in Mao's China, you know, when the revolution came, they knew to switch sides. They knew to switch sides, you know, the moment they had to. And some of them couldn't because they were too much invested in the previous regime, and Mao knew that and probably had them executed. And that's what these guys do. You know, Stalin and Mao, they just executed people left and right. And because they're constantly worried, they know, being power-hungry individuals, that there's other power-hungry individuals they have to watch out for. You know, you can't be a power-hungry madman. I mean, it's the same thing. You might look at me and go, how do you know all this? Well, you know, I spent years studying the mafia, and that's exactly how the mafia works. It's exactly how all the organized crime families work. You fight your way to be the boss. You fight your way towards that power. And when you get there, your immediate next step is you have to watch out for the people coming up behind you. And you kind of always have to do that. Even when you're just a capo in the mafia, you have to watch out for the people behind you and the people ahead of you. And there's constant machinations going on, and you have to be aware of them. You have to play that game. People on the left, these protesters, they don't know that game. They have no clue of that game. Most of them. There's a few of them in there. They're total Stalins, and they're climbing up the ranks within that group. But eventually, those people will get bored and realize, oh, there's no power here, and they'll leave. Those are the guys who switch over. Those are the neocons. The neocons were on the left, and then they switched over for Bush, and now they're kind of switching back. A lot of them. Or they did. Some of them switched over for the Obama administration, and a lot of them are switching over now. Or a lot of them don't know where to go because Trump is really the disruptor in chief. You don't know where it's all going to end up at the end of the day, and somehow he just keeps winning. So, when you're one of these power hungry guys, you try to straddle that and like, oh, is Trump going to be impeached today? Oh, he's not. I better go kiss his butt. So, in the comments we talked about, Occupy Wall Street. They're not the same. Most of those guys were a bunch of well-meaning hippies, and they did some good. They paid off people's houses. They raised money for people who were deep in debt, and that was a good thing. Economically, they really don't know where to protest. They protested Wall Street, and the Wall Street guys laughed at them. If you wanted to see those Wall Street guys go absolutely pale and see the blood drain from their faces in absolute horror, you should have moved over a few blocks and protested the Federal Reserve. Then those guys would have been scared because that's where their money is. That's where all the control is. It's not on Wall Street. Those guys make a lot of money and whatever. But they laughed at the Occupy guys. They laughed at them. You could see them in the footage. If you want to go after anything, and the cops, they got a little rough, but not really rough. If they had protested the Federal Reserve, there'd be people who would be dead. Make no mistake about it. The people who are in charge know where the levers of power are. The people who are protesting kind of fumble around looking for them. And the fact that they just scream Nazi and fascist at everybody who disagrees with them should tell you something. They don't know who the enemy is. They're just frustrated and they're just flailing about, hoping, please, someone is paying attention to me. I have issues. I have problems. And they conflate everything. I used to go to these anti-war protests, and I would be there to protest war, to protest the military-industrial complex, because I'm a libertarian. I wasn't a libertarian then, but I was on my way. And, I'd get there, and it'd be like, yeah, war sucks. Yeah, okay, great. And then they'd hand me this flyer for, and we're going to try to get everybody housing. I'm like, everybody housing? What does that have to do with the war? And we're going to try to get free college. I go, I don't, what? We're going to fight for marginalized people and equality. And you realize that the socialists and the communists are there, and they'll infiltrate anything to try to push their agenda. It's because they have no power. The reason they do this is they have no power. These are the only places they can infiltrate. Where else are they going to infiltrate? You're going to infiltrate a Starbucks. You're going to infiltrate, a business. You're going to infiltrate, a library. They have no other places. Those are the only places. College campuses and protest. And they're two sides of the same coin. It's why, again, in the Wokistan book, we talk about how the colleges are just these factories for discussing communism and socialism like it's a viable alternative. Even when I went to college, they discussed that a little, but it wasn't like an open discussion like it is now. It was more like, well, we all know. We all know socialism and communism could work, but, we're not going to talk about that. And I would just be like, oh, that's weird. But it's like finding out that they moved Christmas and it's not really, they moved Christmas to put it on a pagan holiday so people would celebrate it. And then they get to college and they find out, there's this communism nobody ever told me about. It's just a poor educational system. And most of these people who come out of college, they're going to be slapped in the face with economic realities. They'll get a job and they'll look at the paycheck and they go, wow, I pay a lot in taxes. And then at the end of the year, they're going to pay their taxes. And it's like, I got to pay all this money? This sucks. I need that money. And then they realize, well, wait a minute. If everybody gets free college and free healthcare, I'm going to have to pay more money. Oh, man, wait a minute. The math doesn't work out, if they can do math. A lot of them can't. So, this has been going on for decades. So, Is it worse? Is the left worse? Well, it seems that way. I mean, the media certainly make it seem that way because they're desperate to find something to oppose Trump. And they're run by the left side of politics, in this case, the Democrats. And this is them flailing about trying to get a hook that could win them to the next election. You know, we're in this cycle now where we're in constant election mode. Constantly. So you mark my words. The moment Trump is reelected, there'll be like 6 months to a year. And then after that, the media's just going to drop Trump because they're going to realize, well, we got to focus on other things. The DNC is going to say, we got to focus on the midterms. We got to, he's a lame duck. and then after the midterms, forget it. I mean, then it's really like Trump is not a factor anymore. It's going to be building up whoever's running. It's going to be about tearing down Pence. Pence is the next monster that we can't let in. And they're going to come up with a whole new angle because the old angle didn't work against Trump. And they're definitely going to play up the anti-gay angle on Pence because Pence is passed in that. And that's going to hurt him. It's going to hurt him big time. He may not even be the nominee. I think it's probably will because I think Trump's going to be so strong coming out of his second term that they're going to have to let him be the nominee. They're just going to have to let him. And Donald Trump Jr. won't be ready to run yet. But mark my words, he's going to run. Oh yeah. He's already the second Twitter guy in chief, or tweeter in chief, I should say. He's tweeting away. He's going to be just like his dad. And they'll probably give Pence a run, and he'll get elected, and then he'll try to go back to the same neocon BS, and that won't work. And then finally, the Democrats will have an opening, and maybe finally they'll put somebody up who doesn't just immediately start screaming about identity politics or whatever. I think by that time, people will just be so sick of it, the trend will be over. So our job as reasonable people, we have to be reasonable. We have to see this stuff more reasonably and not see it totally negative. We have to keep trying to step out of ourselves and look at it from the outside. Don't get caught up in the anti-wokeness because that could become a trend and then people will take that too far and people will get sick of it. So don't get caught up in that. Obviously, I've done Wokistan, a novel, which is very much a satire in the anti-woke vein, but, there's a limit. There's a limit on both sides, and you want to stay in the limits because once you exceed those limits, you basically become an extremist. You go down a rabbit hole, and then, you start to think very weird things. And maybe you think I think weird things, but I like to think I'm very moderate, I'd like to think most people are libertarian in their views because, there are left views and right views, and I don't even believe in the left and right. I think it's way more complicated. I think there are multiple sides. I think you'd have to make it like more of like a octagon, really, of sides. But that's just me and my theories. So anyhow, I gotta wrap this video up. I think Joan's had enough. So say bye, Joan. Bye bye. And we will see you next time.